Two terms that appear to describe the same thing but that actually don't? Okay then. So what is the difference between input lag and response time? Welcome to Minute Science. To be clear here, asking the question, what is the difference between input lag and response time, is a bit like asking what the difference is between the senses of both touch and sight. They're two completely different things, but it's always nice to have both in check. Let's tackle input lag first. Input lag is defined as the delay between a user-defined stimulus and the display in question. For instance, consider a gamer pressing a key on a keyboard. The time it takes for the screen being used to respond to this keystroke is the degree of input lag involved, typically measured in milliseconds. As a rule of thumb, input lag generally decreases with higher refresh rates, so at 60 Hz, each image is flashed for roughly 17 milliseconds, meaning that 17 milliseconds is the bare minimum input lag a user will experience when playing a game at 60 frames per second. At 144 Hz, each preceding frame can be displayed after 7 milliseconds, less than half the time required at 60. But there are obviously several other factors to consider here. The use of a wireless controller or keyboard can increase input lag, as could networking capabilities to an extent. Upscaling, that is, gaming in a non-native resolution, could also dramatically increase input lag since it requires additional processing by the screen in question. To ensure that this additional processing is avoided, especially when gaming at native resolutions, TVs and monitors will invoke gaming modes to reduce the overall apparent input lag. So if input lag is the sense of touch in our analogy here, essentially how a game feels, then response time is the sense of sight, predominantly how gaming looks on a display. Response time is defined as the time required for a single pixel on a display to change from one color to another. For instance, consider a car moving across a screen. If a display features a relatively low response time, somewhere in the realm of 5 milliseconds, the car will look relatively uniform throughout its journey. However, if the response time is significantly higher, the car will look as though it is blurred to an extent, mimicking artificial motion blur instilled in some video games. More on that right here. So in general, if an object is faster moving, a lower response time is typically desired, especially when it comes to first-person shooters. You may have heard the term ghosting, which refers to a display's tendency to produce more than one of any given object as a result of its relative movement, and obviously the higher the response time of any monitor, the more ghosting you will notice. So you can see how having one of these in check without the other can still produce a very unenjoyable experience. If the game doesn't feel or look right, it won't play right, and that's why your monitor or TV choice is an important one. In general, I look for a response time of roughly 5 milliseconds or lower. It always ends up being higher when you actually test it yourself. There is no industry standard for this thing, although grade-to-grade testing is very popular among enthusiasts. And while input lag isn't something you'll find just stamped on the outside of a computer monitor or TV box, typically any computer monitor made within the last 2 or 3 years should have the input lag problem in check. At least for the average gamer. There are obviously gaming monitors available for the diehards and TVs for those more concerned with home theater gaming. There's a list of TV input lag times in this video's description, but for the most part, your average monitor advertising somewhere around a 5 millisecond response time should also have input lag in check. It would be a disservice to the manufacturer in question to create and promote a monitor with terrible input lag, but be cautious, they are still out there. Refer to ratings and reviews before purchasing any product in which you intend to invest quite a large sum of money. This is Science Studio. Did you think it in your head? Thanks for learning with us.